Senator Mike Lee has continued to speak out in frustration in regard to how the Trump administration has failed to provide intelligence to justify the assassination of Iran's top military general, Qasem Soleimani. Now, we showed some of his criticism yesterday, but he just recently went on Martha MacCallum's show on Fox News, and here's what he had to say about the briefing.
What I'm concerned about is the flippant attitude that they reflected, both with regard to the underlying facts on Friday's attack, and especially as they relate moving forward to any subsequent attack that we might undertake on Iran. That's antithetical to the Constitution, and it's not something that we can countenance. We repeatedly asked them, under what circumstances would you need to come back to us to get authority from Congress before taking an action against Iran? For example, what if you decided that you wanted to take out the supreme leader? Would you, in that circumstance, need to come back to Congress for a declaration of war or an authorization for the use of military force? Astoundingly, they refused to answer that question. I find that simply unacceptable. They kept telling us that there would have been an imminent attack had they not taken this strike on Friday, which again, for purposes of this conversation, I'm willing to assume may well have been lawful. But then when we would ask them, what was the nature of that attack? When and where would it have occurred? By whom would it have been carried out? They refused to answer the question. And they deferred in the same way they would if we weren't in a classified environment, saying, well, we can't talk about that. Well, we were in an underground bunker designed for that very purpose, and they should have told us.
I think most people understand your frustration.
Actually, most people on the Republican side don't understand Mike Lee's frustration because they've decided to be loyal to Donald Trump regardless of what he does, regardless of how unconstitutional it is. Rand Paul and Mike Lee, and I believe one other Republican lawmaker, have spoken out against the lack of intel. But for the most part, Republican lawmakers are unified in their opposition toward what Mike Lee was saying there. And we'll get to that in just a minute, but I want to give you a little more from Mike Lee. So he said that he was briefed, the senators were briefed by Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, CIA Director Gina Haspel. I mean, this is a list of the worst people.
And some of them acting, just to be fair.
And General Mike Milley of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And as you guys know from earlier this week, we gave you a statement from Milley where he just said, yeah, imminent threat, it was an imminent threat. I mean, we didn't know who, what, where, when, but we knew they were planning. I'm paraphrasing, but not by much. And so that does not indicate that there was actually an imminent threat here. And I think what Lee is saying about how, okay, well, at what point does the administration think it's appropriate to notify Congress? And he says that they were unclear about that they couldn't give him an answer. That is a problem, and I'm glad that he's speaking out against it.
Yeah, and I guess he says they were unclear about it, but I would argue that they're being very clear about it. He could not come up with a situation extreme enough where they would admit that in that case, yes, they would notify Congress, even up to assassinating the supreme leader of Iran. If they believe that that does not require disclosure, then nothing does. I mean, we're launching 10 nukes at North Korea. Maybe that then, if not the whole taking out the supreme leader thing. No, they believe that they should be able to start a war. They know that in the Constitution it says that the Congress is supposed to declare war. If taking out the top leader of a country isn't a declaration of war against it, then nothing is. And so that's fine. You can believe that the president should be able to do that. That should be his power. The executive branch should have it. But then you have to forget pretending anymore that you care about the letter of the Constitution or what actually is included in there. If you believe that no, we have to sort of see how things have developed in our country over our history, and I think now it makes more sense for the president to do that, then fine. Then anything is up for grabs philosophically when it comes to the Constitution.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, look, later you're gonna see a number of Republican lawmakers or right-wing members of the media argue that this is ridiculous, that Congress would need to be involved, that Trump should have all the power that he needs in order to unilaterally make these types of decisions. The Constitution is supposed to ensure that Congress is involved in the decision making. The whole point of our system of government is to provide checks and balances. The executive branch isn't supposed to act unilaterally when it comes to something as serious as invading a country and pursuing military action. And so, as we've also talked about, Congress is proposing a War Powers Act in order to ensure that congressional lawmakers are notified and part of this decision-making process. And so Mike Lee has said, openly that he plans on voting in favor of that. But what I found interesting was, according to The Hill, officials warned against supporting a resolution curtailing Trump's war powers, saying it would embolden Iran. It's just ridiculous nonsense. And here is Mike Pence, our vice president, justifying the lack of intelligence.
Why not, in a classified setting, can our briefers from this administration share what it was, this threat that you talk about, in a classified setting?
Well, some of that has to do with what's called sources and methods, Savannah, that if we were to share all of the intelligence, and in fact, some of the most compelling evidence that Qasem Soleimani was preparing an imminent attack against American forces and American personnel, also represents some of the most sensitive intelligence that we have. It could compromise those sources and methods. So look,
even in a classified setting.
I have tremendous respect for Senator Mike Lee. I recognize he's had a difference of opinion with our administration over self-defense measures the president authorized in Yemen. But look, we'll welcome those debates going forward. But I can assure your viewers that those of us that have seen all the evidence, that saw the evidence in real time, know that President Trump made the right decision to take Qasem Soleimani off the battlefield. America is safer. The world is safer.
If Mike Pence, if our intelligence organizations, if the executive branch had concrete intel and evidence justifying that assassination, I have no doubt in my mind that they would share it with the Senate, and that these Republican senators, Mike Lee is not some progressive, okay? He's not some like peace-loving hippie who's like, no man, I don't want to go to war. That's not who he is. He understands the gravity of the situation and he wants to see the evidence. I have no doubt in my mind that the intelligence community would show him that evidence if they had it and they would be detailed about it. I don't think they have it.
This is one of those cases where I understand, but I'm frustrated about the need to hide sources for stories. Because way back in the weekend, the New York Times reported that all of this had nothing to do with some plan that Soleimani was coming up with that was brewing in the background. It was they needed to respond in some way to the attack that killed the American contractor. So they put together a menu of options for Trump. He initially chose to do that bombing that they did. They did the bombing, then he got frustrated about it. The embassy was surrounded, and so he decided to take out Soleimani. And the top officials, multiple of which talked with the New York Times but haven't been named, were stunned that he took that option.
Exactly.
They were stunned because there wasn't an imminent threat that needed to be taken out.
Exactly,
but they can't be revealed, and so there's no pressure.
What we do know, and based on Trump's own comments after what happened at the embassy in Tehran, he kept repeating that he's not Obama, right? That this isn't gonna be another Benghazi. And so the action that he took in response to what happened at the embassy in Tehran was to prove a point about how he's this tough guy, as opposed to Obama, who Republicans keep saying was weak when it came to what happened in Benghazi.
Yeah, and so we have to go through a full another week of this ridiculous back and forth.
Right.
Oh, do they have the intelligence? Do they not? Nobody who went into that room came out who hadn't already thought they did, thinking that they did. They were convinced by the evidence. It's all BS, and they can't burn their sources. So those people who spoke to the New York Times, they were so worried about what they saw that they reached out to the New York Times. They then slunk back into their jobs in the Trump administration, and they're allowing this myth to continue that Trump can be trusted to pretend that he has intelligence. So the next time something like this happens and they say, oh, we had imminent threat, wink, wink, some people will still believe it because it's not being outed right now how much of a sham this is.
And keep in mind that North Korea is developing its nuclear weapons. Donald Trump has not spoken out against them. In fact, he went on an international tour touting his love affair with Kim Jong-un. So I put that out because remember, our actions in other countries influence the relationships we have with other countries, right? So if Donald Trump is, in a very public way demonstrating this giant double standard for Iran and going out there and doing like positive PR for Kim Jong-un, how is he gonna then turn around to Iran, which was complying with the Iran nuclear deal, and say, no, you're the aggressor. You're the bad guy. We're coming for you. Like, it's ridiculous. I think most people who follow the news and have, at least some level of cognitive functioning understand that this is nonsense, and he's not to be trusted. I don't trust anything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. He's a serial liar, and he's a child.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.